Hello and good morning. My name is Mamaika and I am your secretary for today's meeting. Uh, First of all, I'd like to welcome our Chief Executive Officer, Hafizul, our production manager, Arif, our finance manager, Nash Jacob, and then our business manager, Lukman, the quality manager Mira, and finally our supply chain manager Haziq. Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to ask that all of you please press on Windows and press and hold Control Space Bar. On Mac, press and hold Option and Space Bar. This is for you to mute your microphone, so it will be less distracting when people are sharing their thought opinions, while the rest of us are muted.
Good morning. If we are all here, let's get started. First of all, I'd like you to please join me in welcoming Haziq, our supply chain manager.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward for our meeting today.
Let's get started. Have you all received a copy of today's agenda? If you don't mind, I'd like to skip item 1 and move on to item 2, which is should we increase our minimum wage instead of trying to import more foreigner labor? Haikal has kind agreed to give us a report on these matters. Haikal?
Yeah, so before I begin the report, I'd like to get some ideas from all of you. Should we increase our minimum wage or instead of trying to import more foreign labor? Uh, if you think we should increase minimum wage, then why? I suggest we go around the table first to get all of your inputs and thoughts on this matter.
So, in my opinion, we need to rise our minimum wage rate instead of importing foreign workers into our company. Because by rising the minimum wage, it will increase economic activity and stimulate job growth. The economy policy uh, institute state that the increase in the minimum wage from the current rate of RM 80 ringgit and 65 cents an hours to RM 10 ringgit 82 cents will inject a net RM 22.1 billion into the economy and create about 85,000 new jobs during the 3 years phase-in.
I'm afraid I can't agree with you. I think increasing the minimum wage would force businesses to lay off employees and raise unemployment levels. Other than that, employers are also wary of global pressures, including inflation, supply chain disruptions that may affect the growth in the next year.
So, in my view, increasing the minimum wage will reduce poverty. As you can see, Luxembourg is the highest minimum wage in 2020 and the lowest poverty in world in 2020. So, we must consider the increasing the minimum wage.
Sorry, I'm flush with you. Raising the minimum wage will be increase poverty. In the minimum wage increase too high, the cost of developing business will also increase.
A higher minimum wage will reduce government welfare spending. Therefore, the welfare spending can be used for other programs such as 5G technology, more public facilities that can further facilities that people in Malaysia. What your opinion, Haziq?
For my opinion, a minimum wage increase would hurt businesses and force companies to close. We can see that SMEs, small and medium industries, will receive a significant impact, where their workers' wages need to be increased, while their profits are very small.
See, the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation. Raising the minimum wage and indexing it to inflation would ensure that low-wage workers could adopt a standard of living commensurate with the current economy.
Rising the minimum wage would increase the price of consumer goods.
Also, improvements in productivity and economic growth have outpaced increases in the minimum wage.
Okay, so teenagers and young adults may be shut out of the workers if the minimum wage is increased. As we can see, it has a devastating impact of teenager because firm will not pay many young workers with no skills or experience minimum wage, let alone a higher wage.
Mira, do you have anything to say?
Alright. Actually, increasing the minimum wage would be reduce income inequality by raising the income of the low wage worker, improving their working conditions and increasing their spending power. In fact, when low wage worker have more money to spend, they do not simply spend it on their what you call it volatiles something like that lah. Then they also invest it in their own future through their educations, saving, and their greater financial security.
True. And we firmly believe that a minimum wage increase would help and reduce the race and gender inequality. In order for the company to thrive, it is important that all workers are paid what they deserve.
Increasing the minimum wage reduce upward mobility as a low skill worker unable to move into higher paying job.
But raising the minimum wage may help many people make ends meet. While raising the minimum wage would benefit workers who are on the receiving end of any increased pay, employees and consumers would not necessarily be harmed if they were forced to raise prices slightly to cover the high labor costs.
If the minimum wage is increased, company may use more automation and robots to replace humans. It's not guarantee that these automated processes will be safer or better than service employers.
Perhaps, but increasing the minimum wage would increase worker productivity and reduce employee turnover. This is because when workers are paid more, they have more incentive to work hard and avoid neglecting their jobs. As for reducing turnover, raising the minimum wage would also help businesses save money on hiring and training replacements.
So in order to increasing the federal minimum wage, would this professionally harm the poorest areas of Malaysia, where workers are more likely to be employed in low wage industries?
All right. Actually, for the current minimum wage is not too high enough to allow people to afford the housing. This is hurt the economy by making it difficult for workers to afford basic living costs and may cause them to have trouble supporting their family.
I kindly agree on that opinion, Mira. Raising the minimum wage will increase the cost of housing. Reason behind this is that there are an inverse relationship between the cost of labor and the building cost. More workers means more demand for houses, and higher wages imply that workers can afford a better housing.
People working full time should not live in poverty. The current minimum wage is not high enough to allow people to afford everyday essential like rent, food, transportation, and healthcare.
Yes, the best way to determine an adequate minimum wage is through the wisdom of the free market. Unions, especially those representing labor, want the federal government to enact legislation that will impact their pay and benefit. But those in favor of a federally mandated living wage don't often acknowledge what they're really asking for, which is a mandated minimum price on poor work.
Rising the minimum wage would lead to a healthier population and prevent premature death. When when people earn more, they spend more. This means that a higher minimum wage leads to better diet and more exercise. It also means that low-income workers are less likely to use risky financial products like credit cards or payday loans, which can lead to debit and bankruptcy.
On the other hand, raising the minimum wage would decrease employee benefits and increase tax payments. The reason being, employers will get government to increase taxes, so they don't have to pay as much, and employees can be paid less. So a raise in minimum wages makes absolutely no difference.
Okay, so rising the minimum wage will help ensure that our nation's children have quality education. It will increase school attendance and decrease high school dropouts, which will help them later in life.
All right, raising the minimum wage would have a major impact on high school enrollment rate and drop out the rates. It would likely lead to decrease in enrollment rate as more people would choose to work rather than attend to school. It could also have a negative impact on graduation rate as those who choose to work will have a harder time to staying in the school. Ultimately, rising the minimum wage will have a serious implication for our education system.
And from my point of view, raising the minimum wage would help reduce the federal deficit because we have payroll and income tax revenues. These two would rise as a result of an increase in the minimum wage. The federal deficit will come down.
Rising the minimum wage will encourage company to outsource job to countries where costs would be lower. As we can see, Apple company was open their company on China to cut cost the production. Yeah.
So raising the minimum wage would also reduce crime. Therefore, the time has come for the relevant parties to sit down and discuss proposals to raise the wages of workers in all employment sectors in the country in line with the high cost of living that is currently being faced. With the increase in the current salary rate, it will not be easy for an employee to fall into the corruption crime scene and get stuck into other unhealthy activities that could harm themselves.
Rising the minimum wage would not reduce crime. The cooperation of various domestic and foreign agencies is necessary because poverty is not a crime. However, if it remains, poverty will produce so many criminals and become a major factor in crimes such as theft, drug seller, and violent crime.
Okay, I think we don't have much time. I will recap on the advantages and disadvantages that have been brought up in this meeting today. Okay, so first, the advantages are raising the minimum wage would increase economic activity and job growth, reduce poverty, reduce government welfare spending, reduce the income inequality, and minimum wage has not kept up with inflation and improves productivity. On the other hand, the disadvantages are that increasing minimum wage would force businesses to lay off employees and raise employment rate, increase poverty, force businesses and companies to close and shut down, increase the price of consumer goods, decrease employee benefits, and increase tax payments, decrease high school enrollment rates, and increase dropout rates. And it would not reduce crime. Majority have agreed that increase minimum wage instead of importing workers.
Unfortunately, we are running short on time. We will have to leave that to others time. Thank you very much, all of you. It look as true we have covered the main item. In there any other business?
I'd like to ask, when can we fix the next meeting?
Good idea, Nash. How does Friday next week? Let's meet at the same time, 9 o'clock. Is that okay for everyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds
Yeah.
okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'd like to thank you, Haika, for coming to our meeting today. The meeting is closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So